This is John Hosking. He's going to talk about a Visual Wiki.
Thanks, John. This is work that's done with a bunch of people at Auckland, in particular Christian Hirsch, who's a student of John Grundy and mine, together with some other colleagues, Tim Chaffee from our Information Technology Services group, and a couple of summer interns, David McDonald and Yuri Haliski. Oops. So I'm going to talk a little bit about background, approach, methodology, concentrate on the Visual Wiki metaphor that we're developing, a very short evaluation that we've done of the technology, and then some discussion afterwards. So if we think about the term Visual Wiki, we can divide that into two parts, the visual part and the wiki part. And if we look at the visual part, there's a variety of different things that come to mind in terms of things like information visualization on the one hand, knowledge visualization in a more general sense, domain-specific visual languages, which is something that our group's been playing around a lot with, and then human-computer interaction, how do you interact with visualizations and make them useful, and underpinning that cognition, how do you actually make use of a visualization in order to stimulate the brain into recognizing patterns that it would be difficult to recognize otherwise. If we look on the wiki side, of course, wikis are wrapped up with the whole Web 2.0 and moving into the business side, Enterprise 2.0, knowledge management as an alternative to the more formal approaches to knowledge management, and then underpinning that a whole lot of tools, technologies, concepts, the semantic web, and so on. So what we're trying to do and what we're aiming for with the Visual Wiki is to try and marry these two sort of concepts together. So if we first of all look at the wiki side of it, if we think about Web 2.0 or Enterprise 2.0, we all have a sort of understanding of what they are, although there are really no clear definitions. There's a mixture of tools, things like wikis, blogs, social software and the like, which is the surface effect of it, some underlying technologies that make it all happen, things like RSS, AJAX and so forth. And then the concepts that Web 2.0 enables are things like user participation, mass collaboration, rich user experience, remixability, all of these sorts of terms that we're used to seeing bandied about. The key point is that this whole set of technologies and concepts is changing the way in which we as humans process information. If we look at the information lifecycle, you can sort of break it into stuff about creating information or knowledge, organising it in some way, distributing it around the place for other people to consume. The other people have to search and find for it, and then they make use of it and reuse it. So if we look at the Web 1.0 versus Web 2.0, we're used to seeing this migration from things like strictly personal use through to stuff where there's mass participation, there's instant feedback on the sort of stuff that you do. And underpinning that, things like a move from a proprietary content management system into peer production, collaboration, mass collaboration, organising it via social software mechanisms rather than using strict directories, hyperlink structures and the like, and all the way through, of course, PageRank, taxonomies and the like, as ways of changing the way in which we search and access the information. Following along behind this is the impact on business and the intranet. So in Enterprise 1.0, so to speak, we're used to a top-down approach to creation of knowledge, whereas if we're moving into Enterprise 2.0, it's a more organic, bottom-up sort of approach to doing things. And this challenges the typical enterprise, who are very hidebound into policies and procedures, and this sort of organic, democratic approach to generation and management of knowledge is somewhat contrary to that centrist tendency in many organisations. If we then go across to the information knowledge visualization, both of these are effective methods for representing and organising knowledge and information-rich scenarios. It allows us to make sense of large, complicated stuff by providing visualizations. And the reason this is effective, of course, is that we as humans are pretty good at dealing with spatial concepts, dynamic concepts. So if we have visualizations that hook into that cognitive processing system, then we can exploit that ability of the human brain to understand large, complicated systems more efficiently. So the technique in both of these sorts of approaches is to have some sort of resource object. That's the thing that we want to visualize, the information or the knowledge. We have some sort of visual way of representing that knowledge. So it's the domain-specific visual language, the visualization, if you like. And then we have some sort of purpose that we want to achieve. It might be that we're actually creating knowledge. So we're actually creating knowledge via a domain-specific visual language, or we may be actually using the visualization to understand or organise knowledge, transfer it to others, and so forth. So coming back to our concept of the Visual Wiki, what we're trying to do is marry those two worlds together. So both of them have the potential to improve the way in which we go about doing knowledge management. That's reasonably obvious. For the wiki, it's this ability to think dynamically, to be able to collaboratively develop stuff, have an ad hoc creation mechanism, and then organise stuff afterwards. And that's much closer to the way in which we tend to think about doing things. We tend to introspect a little, then organise things, introspect some more, and so forth. And then the visual side of it is, of course, as I've already said, a very efficient way to represent and organise the knowledge that we've obtained, particularly in information-rich scenarios. So the approach that we've taken in this work is to try and explore this concept of what a visual wiki might mean, and to take that term apart, deconstruct it, and then work out how we can go about exploiting a range of technologies and a range of approaches to develop a variety of different concepts that relate to this Visual Wiki approach. So there are existing approaches, of course, to doing this. So if any of you have played with Glyphy, Glyphy's a thin client visual editing tool, so it's a graphical editor. It allows you to create diagrams on the web. In our case, it's been linked with the Confluence wiki tool, so it allows you to do things like diagrams within a wiki page. And it's a very good tool. If you haven't played with it, I strongly recommend you have a bit of a look at it. So that's a, sorry?
What is it called?
Glyphy. G-L-I-F-F-Y. Down the bottom. Okay. So that's an active approach. There are passive approaches as well. So things like the Touch Graph Wiki browser allow you to represent a graph associated with a wiki, so representing the connection of wiki pages to each other. That's a passive approach. It provides a visualization of knowledge that's already been essentially organised. So what we want to do is actually combine the active and the passive together so that we end up with a mapping between a wiki and a visualization. And that mapping may involve communication in either direction. And what we want to do is explore how we can actually make use of such a mapping to do interesting knowledge management activities. So in thinking about that, what you have is four components. You've got, on the one hand, the visualization, on the other hand, the textual wiki stuff. You've got a mapping between them, and then underpinning that, you've got some sort of concept which you're trying to represent in some way. So what we've done is broken that down into a whole lot of different parameters associated with each of those mechanisms, and of course that's far too small to read. But if you take out the ones that are really important, the sorts of things that we're interested in there are the type of mapping, so the cardinality, if you like, on the mapping. Typically, the visualization side is often a one, where you're trying to aggregate up stuff that's in a many situation within a wiki or textual structure. But that can be a one-to-one mapping, it can be a one-to-m mapping, or, as we'll explore later, it could be a many-to-many type mapping as well. And then there's an issue of consistency. So if you change something on one or other side, what's the impact on the mapping? So you could have no consistency, so you're maintaining things sort of semi-independently. You could have one-way consistency, so if you change something on one side, that impacts the other side, or you could have full bidirectional consistency. Then if you look underneath into the concepts, the most important parameters there are to do with the sort of content that you have. Is this something that's quite general, sort of Wikipedia type stuff, general knowledge type stuff that's related to mass participation, or is it something that's more specific, something that's quite internal to, say, a small business unit and very focused in its representation? And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's the purpose for which you're doing this. Are you trying to create knowledge, organise it, distribute it, search for it, or apply it, or some combination of those sorts of things? So having come up with that sort of formalism, what we were interested in doing was exploring various combinations of those parameters to see how useful they might be in practice. So the approach that we've taken is to choose one control parameter amongst those 4 parameters there, and 3 variable parameters, vary the 3 variables and see what effect that has on the control parameter. The control parameter we've chosen is the purpose. So what we're interested in doing is generating a variety of different example Visual Wiki structures, varying the other parameters, and seeing how useful each of those different types of Visual Wiki might be for the purpose. Okay, so what we've in fact done is produce to date 3 prototypes exploring some combination of those parameters. Clearly there's lots more combinations that we could look at. And then we've done a very brief evaluation which has given us some clue that we're on the right direction in terms of the differentiations that are being made, and we're in the process of doing a larger evaluation to get a better handle on the different utility factors. So the first of the prototypes is something we've called ThinkBase. The type of mapping here is one-to-one, so we've got nodes in the visualization corresponding directly to entities within the textual wiki pages. There's 2-way consistency, so if either side changes, you get effects on the other. It's very general content. As we'll see, it's in fact Wikipedia in a semantic web form. And then we're interested in what sort of purpose you might apply that sort of prototype to. The second one, VBKE, this is the Visual Body of Knowledge Explorer. The mapping here was one-to-many, so this is an aggregation of information that's in a wiki into a condensed visualization. The aggregation is independently managed from the wiki structure, so there's essentially no consistency, although I'll elaborate on that a little bit when we get to that particular example. And the content here is medium in the sense that it's being used to represent the information architecture of a university, in fact our university. And the challenge that we had there was that Tim Chaffee, one of the people contributing to this project, wanted a way of explaining the information architecture of the university to our Vice-Chancellor. So he wanted something that aggregated stuff up in a way that the general layperson could understand. Then the third one was quite a specific one, so the content was specific. It was a process mapper, so the mapping here is many-to-many, the consistency is one-way, and it's quite specific content. So the three of them together span all of the values of the various parameters there, although clearly there are different combinations of those that you could apply as well. Okay, so the first of the prototypes is an integration of the ThinkMap visualization tool with Freebase. So Freebase is a semantic wiki which is publicly accessible. It's been seeded with the Wikipedia information base, and there's been quite a strong attempt to structure the information within the semantic wiki to exploit the semantic concepts that relate the Wikipedia wiki pages together. In this particular case, as I mentioned earlier, there's one-to-one mapping, there's two-way consistency, although the system I'll demo to you is only one-way consistent at the present. General knowledge, and as I say, it exploits the Freebase semantic wiki nature. So what I'll do is just flick over to ThinkBase, which is running over here. So here we see ThinkBase. Resolution of the screen's a little bit small, so it's the visualization's a little bit compact. But what we see here is the featured piece of information is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and there's a visualization of the semantic relationships associated with that around it, so we can see that the people starring in that, various people starring in it. It's written by David Kopp and Jeff Nathanson, for example, and various pieces of information. And over here on Freebase is the Freebase entry for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. If you haven't seen Freebase before, you'll see that further down on the entry in a tabular form are the semantic linkages. So each of these is a table, and if you edit either end of it, then there's a consistent relationship managed. So Freebase, if you haven't played with it, is another cool tool to have a bit of a look at. So over here, in terms of the visualization, we can explore around in this. So we can, for example, have a look at Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade as another alternative, and we'll see once it rearranges itself. Hopefully, it's interesting. We haven't had the Freebase come up. Let's try over here. Okay, we've got a failure. Switch. Oh no, we're all right. Okay. So we see as we navigate to other parts of the graph there, we get Freebase coming up in correspondence to that. We can do things like find out about George Lucas. This is going very slowly. So we can do a search on George Lucas, for example, in Wikipedia, or since we're here, in Google. The connection is very slow. We'll wait for that to come up. So the key thing is here that what we've got is a visualization that we can wander around in, and once it's thought a bit, it will come up with some maybe not. Classic case of don't do live demos. Let's try doing something else. Let's try doing a search up here. Oh, there's the Google search for George Lucas. It's finally come up. And here I've done a search on Homer. Oops, we've had an exception thrown. That wasn't the Homer I wanted, so we've got a variety of different search results that correspond to that, so we can find the Homer that I was more interested in, Homer Simpson. And if we wait for a while, there'll be the visualization come up on that. So normally this is running a little bit quicker than this. We'll leave that to rearrange itself and come back later. Okay, so just going back to the talk here. So we've looked at ThinkBase as one example that's going very slowly. As I mentioned, there's two-way consistency in the original ThinkBase tool that we developed, so you can actually add new semantic wiki linkages in the visualization. You can't do it in the public version that we've made available. And you can make changes in the semantic wiki side, and the visualization side is kept consistent. So there's two-way consistency maintained there. The second prototype was, again, an integration of ThinkMap, this time with Confluence, which is a corporate wiki. This is a one-to-many mapping. There's no consistency except for the fact that it's doing a search within the wiki. So if you change the wiki structure, the searches will obviously get updated each time you do them. And as I mentioned before, it's more specific knowledge in that it's to do with the information architecture of the university. So here's part of the visual VBKE running. Sorry, the resolution's a little bit difficult to see here, but the sorts of elements that you have in here are things like business units within the university, various applications that they're using in terms of enterprise software, various technologies that underpin those applications, and the like. And then what you can do in a similar sort of approach here with the visualization, over here we've got an internal search of the wiki for things that relate to the elements that you've selected on the left. Now the graph that's essentially underpinning the visualization on the left is separately maintained from the wiki structure. So it's, if you like, it's the information architect's graph representation of the information architecture of the university, and then that's mapped through to interesting wiki information via a similar sort of mechanism that I showed you in the ThinkBase Explorer. So you can do things like search the wiki, again search Google and look at the URL associated with these things and so forth. You can edit the graph as part of the visualization structure, so you can modify the representations being visualized there, add new nodes, modify the names of them, and so forth. So that was the second one. The third one was, again, an integration of ThinkMap. So we've used this in all three applications because it's reasonably convenient to program with. And this is an integration of ThinkMap, this time with MediaWiki, with an end-to-end mapping, one-way consistency, and quite specific knowledge. In this particular case, what we've got is a visualization of a business process. So imagine, if you like, some sort of a business process that you're mapping out, and what you're interested in doing is to map that business process diagram that you have through to a set of nodes that might relate to it as part of a search result. And then the idea is to influence the wiki content through the visualization there. So in this particular case, as you create the visual process within the visualization tool, you get wiki pages generated as a placeholder for playing around with them. So over here we have a representation of a business process. This is enrolling a student within the university with various steps in the process in blue there, and various business units like the student services, enrolment office and so forth associated with them. Now over on the right we've got two visualizations. One is of the wiki pages corresponding to a particular entity, and the other is the web pages corresponding to, in this case, the business unit associated with this particular wiki structure. Okay, so that's a very quick run through the three different prototypes. If we now look at the control parameter that we had there, which was the purpose, what are those three different approaches going to be useful for in terms of that knowledge or information life cycle? So What we did for the evaluation purposes of this was to do an online survey. We only had a very small group of participants. We wanted some very quick information as to whether there were going to be actually differences between these sorts of things. It's quite a biased sample in that most of the people who were involved or related to the project had some knowledge of what we were trying to achieve. But as I say, it was a quick qualitative feedback to give us an idea as to whether we were going in the right direction. So the sorts of things we asked people to do was to compare the straight wiki structure with the visual wiki concept, and then ask them questions about rating the improvement of ability to do things like searching for information or creating information, that sort of thing. So they were related, obviously, to the purpose, which was the control variable that we had. So the critique of that, of course, as I mentioned, is that we've only got a small group and it's a biased set of participants. So down the bottom there, you can see coloured as per the bottom there, what the survey participants thought in terms of the usefulness of each of the different prototypes for the different types of purpose that we had there. And the interesting thing is that there are significant differences. So, for example, not surprisingly, the think-based one, which was very much about navigating general purpose information, was heavily featured in terms of the search characteristics there. A little bit less so in the creation, but interestingly, the organisation rated reasonably highly as well. Whereas the Visual Body of Knowledge Explorer rated fairly highly in terms of distribution, and that was quite interesting because that was really the motivation for developing that particular tool, was to allow a distribution of knowledge from information architects across to lay people within a university. So we can see that there are definite differences in terms of the three prototypes there, albeit with a very small sample of participants. So if we just look at a bit of a summary now in terms of where we've got to. First of all, what we've come up with is this Visual Wiki model. And this sort of theoretical model allows us to analyse and discuss and evaluate different approaches to what a Visual Wiki might actually mean. So we've then looked at a proof of concept in terms of 3 different prototypes, which we've deliberately chosen to exploit different characteristics within that theoretical model. And then we've done a very brief evaluation of those 3 prototypes, which all suggest that their specialisations suit them for particular information lifecycle purposes. Where we want to head to now, obviously, is to improve on the existing prototypes. Clearly, we've got a speed issue in terms of the link from Auckland to here for the one I was trying to demonstrate to you. We're right now undergoing a more formal evaluation, so we've recruited a bunch of participants for a larger usability evaluation, which is being conducted online more or less as we speak. We'd like to extend the Visual Wiki model further to explore some of the other parameters that weren't mentioned, that were in that larger table that I showed there. Implement those further approaches and then evaluate them as well. And then coming back to ASE and the more familiar meta-tool work that you guys know John Grundy and I for, we'd very much like to weave this work back into that meta-tool work. And what we have in mind is the ability to generate Visual Wiki applications using the meta-tool structures that we've developed. So thanks for the opportunity to talk, and happy to take any questions.
John, do you see the possibility to use this also to integrate various different sources of information? So you have, say, in an enterprise, a number of different data sources which you want to visualize, and using that kind of concept to integrate various sources.
Yes, definitely. That's a great extension of the concept. To some extent, wikis already do that, in the sense that the whole purpose of setting up a wiki culture within an organisation is to try and glue those various silos of information together. But doing it explicitly, as you indicate, would be a great sort of concept to do. Other questions? Cheers.
One of the distinct differences between doing this on different sources of information is that you have a path of edits going back from the visualization to the source of data. I mean, so one source of data that comes to mind would be source code itself. And I wonder how general you can make the edits that you make on the visualization, so that very generally you can represent edits on the visualization and pass them back to wherever the data file is.
Okay. So the question, if I understand it, just so the people elsewhere can hear it, one of the things we've been aiming at doing is to provide edits in both directions, and some of the examples exploit that. Jazz's question was, how general can you make those sorts of edits? So that, for example, if instead of a wiki, you might have a piece of source code as the textual component, and what you're doing is editing on the visualization. That's the whole point of what we're doing, is to try to explore that further. So to date, the sorts of edits that we've done have been quite simple ones. So they've been adding a semantic link, for example, in terms of the Freebase work, generating a wiki page in terms of the final process mapper example, editing the separately maintained node structure in the case of the Visual Body of Knowledge Explorer. We're interested in pushing that a lot further, and the reason for hooking it back to the MetaTool work is that we can then generate much more sophisticated editing actions on the part of the visualization than perhaps we're capable with the ThinkMap tool that we've been using to date. So we've used ThinkMap because it's been a very convenient prototyping tool, but we see very quickly that we're going to extend beyond the capabilities that we want out of that. Other questions? Okay, thanks very much.